There is a specific kind of silence that follows a betrayal. It is not the comfortable silence of a quiet room. It is not the peaceful silence of a sleeping house. It is the silence that fills the space where trust used to live. You feel it in your chest first. A coldness that spreads outward, like ice cracking across a frozen lake. The air around you changes. Everything looks the same walls, the same furniture, the same sky outside the window. But nothing feels the same, because the person who was supposed to be safe just proved that they were not. And in that single moment, something inside you breaks. Not loudly, not dramatically. It breaks the way a bone breaks beneath the skin, invisible to everyone else, but you feel every fracture. And here is the truth that nobody tells you about that moment. It is not just an ending. It is not just the death of a relationship or the loss of trust. It is not just sadness or anger or confusion, though it is all of those things at once. It is something far more violent and far more important than that. It is the beginning of a complete rewiring of who you are. The person you were before that moment is gone, and the person you are about to become has not arrived yet. You are standing in the space between two versions of yourself, and that space is the loneliest place on earth. But what if that loneliness is not a punishment? What if it is not a sign that something went wrong, but a sign that something is changing? What if the people who hurt you the most are not just destroyers? What if they are, without meaning to be, the architects of the strongest version of you that will ever exist? That is what we are going to explore today. Not to excuse the pain, not to glorify suffering, but to understand, with honest eyes, how the deepest wounds create the deepest people. Let us start with why certain people have the power to break us in ways that others simply cannot. Because not all pain is equal. A stranger can insult you on the street, and you will forget it by dinner. But a single sentence from someone you love can echo in the quiet corridors of your mind for years. Why is that? What makes their words cut so much deeper? The answer lives in something psychologists call relational trauma. And the concept is simpler than it sounds. When you let someone close to you truly close, you hand them something invisible but incredibly valuable. You hand them your baseline of safety. Your sense that the world is, at its core, a place where you can relax, where you can be yourself without armor, where you do not have to watch your back. This is not something you do consciously. It happens naturally when love or deep trust is present. You open doors inside yourself that you did not even know existed. You show parts of yourself that have never seen daylight, the fears you have never spoken out loud, the dreams you are almost embarrassed to admit, the memories that shaped you in ways you still do not fully understand. And in doing so, you give that person a map to every vulnerable place you have, every insecurity, every fear, every soft, unprotected corner of your heart. You do this willingly, even gladly, because that is what closeness requires. It requires exposure. It requires risk. It requires the terrifying act of standing in front of another person without armor and trusting that they will not strike. Now, when that person honors that trust, it is the most beautiful thing in the world. It is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. But when that person uses that map against you, whether through betrayal, cruelty, or abandonment, the damage is not surface level. It goes all the way down. Because they did not just hurt you. They hurt you in the exact places where you had no defenses. They walked through every open door and broke what they found inside. This is why a broken friendship can hurt more than a car accident. This is why a parent's rejection can shape a life more than any other single event. This is why the people closest to you have the power to recode your entire identity, because they are the only ones you ever let in far enough to reach the wiring. And once that wiring is disrupted, everything changes, not just how you feel, but how you see, how you think, how you move through every room and every conversation for years to come. The world literally looks different after someone you trusted proves they were not worthy of that trust. Colors do not seem as bright. Laughter does not come as easily. And the face you see in the mirror does not quite match the person you remember being. This is the before and after that so many people carry in silence. There is the version of you that existed before the wound. That version was lighter, more open, quicker to laugh and slower to doubt. That version walked into rooms without scanning for danger. That version believed people when they said kind things. That version trusted freely because trust had never been expensive. And then there is the version of you that exists after. This version is heavier, more careful. There is a pause before every answer, a calculation before every act of openness. This version notices things that the old version never would have caught. The slight shift in someone's tone, the way a person's eyes move when they are not being honest, the distance in a hug that used to be warm, the carefully chosen words that sound kind but carry something colder underneath. You did not learn to notice these things by choice. You learned them because you had to, because the world taught you through pain that not paying attention has a cost, and that cost was one you could not afford to pay twice. Some people call this the loss of innocence, and in a way it is. There is a certain innocence that dies when someone you trust hurts you deeply. The belief that people are basically good, the assumption that love is enough, the quiet confidence that things will work out because they are supposed to. All of that gets shaken. Some of it shatters completely. But here is what replaces it. And this is where the story starts to turn. What replaces that innocence is something far more useful. Even if it does not feel that way at first, it is awareness. Deep, unshakable awareness. The kind that cannot be taught in a classroom or learned from a book. The kind that only comes from having been caught off guard and surviving it. Let us look at a narrative illustration of how this plays out. Consider someone who gave everything to a friendship that lasted over a decade. They shared secrets. They showed up during hard times. They built a bond that felt permanent. And then, without warning, that friend turned cold. Not because of a fight or a misunderstanding, but because loyalty was never as deep on the other side as it appeared to be. The friendship ended not with an explosion, but with a slow, silent withdrawal that left this person standing in an empty room, wondering what they did wrong. For months, maybe years, this person carried that question like a stone in their pocket. What did I do? Where did I fail? Was I not enough? They replayed conversations in their head, looking for the moment things shifted. They examined their own behavior under a microscope, convinced that if they just looked hard enough, they would find the flaw that caused it all. And those questions, left unanswered, started to reshape them. They became more guarded. They stopped sharing as freely. They watched new friendships with suspicious eyes, always waiting for the other person to leave. Now, on the surface, this looks like damage. And it is. There is no point in pretending otherwise. But beneath that damage, something else is happening. The brain is doing what it does best. It is adapting. It is building new systems to protect itself from the same kind of pain. It is laying down boundaries where there used to be open fields. It is installing locks on doors that used to swing wide open. This is the adaptation mechanism, and it is both a curse and a gift. The curse is obvious. Walls keep pain out. but they also keep connection out. Cynicism protects you from disappointment, but it also protects you from joy. The defenses you build after being hurt are effective, but they are not selective. They block everything, good and bad alike. You find yourself pushing away people who mean you no harm, simply because they got too close too fast. You find yourself testing new friendships in ways that feel unfair, setting small traps to see if people will prove themselves before you let them in. You know you are doing it, and you wish you could stop. But the part of your brain that remembers the pain is louder than the part that wants to trust again. But the gift is subtler, and it takes longer to see, because in the process of building those walls, you learn something about yourself that you could not have learned any other way. You learn what matters to you. You learn where your limits are. You learn the difference between a boundary and a barrier. And most importantly, you learn that you can survive the very thing you are most afraid of. That is not a small thing. In fact, that might be the most important realization a person can ever have. I survived the worst thing I could imagine, and I am still here. That knowledge does not just change your confidence, it changes your entire relationship with fear, because once you know you can survive the bottom, the threats that used to paralyze you lose their grip. Not completely, not all at once, but slowly, steadily, the fear loosens its hold. Consider a case profile of someone whose trust was broken, not by a friend, but by a family member. Someone who grew up believing that home was the safest place in the world, and then discovered, through years of slowly accumulating evidence, that it was not. This person did not have the luxury of walking away. They had to stay. They had to adapt in real time, learning to read moods and predict outbursts and make themselves small enough to avoid notice. And when they finally left, when they finally stepped into the wider world, they carried something that most people never develop, an emotional radar so finely tuned that it bordered on intuition. They could walk into a room and feel the tension before a single word was spoken. They could sense dishonesty the way some people sense a change in the weather. Not because they were gifted, but because they were trained. Trained by pain to pay attention in ways that comfortable people never need to. This is the alchemy of suffering, the slow, often invisible transformation of raw pain into something resembling wisdom. It does not happen overnight. It does not happen in a straight line. There are setbacks and relapses and nights where the old wound opens fresh, and you wonder if you have made any progress at all. There are mornings when you wake up and the first thing you feel is the echo of something that happened years ago, as sharp and present as the day it happened. And you think, will this ever stop? Will I ever be free of this? The answer is complicated. The wound may never fully close, but what changes is your relationship to it. It goes from being the center of your world to being a room in a much larger house. A room you visit sometimes, but no longer live in. And that shift, that slow migration from the center to the periphery, that is healing. It does not look the way you expected, but it is real. And if you look at the arc of the whole journey, from the moment of the wound to the present day, the change is undeniable. The deep thinkers of the world, the ones who notice what others miss, the ones who feel things with a weight and a texture that most people never access, these are almost always people who have been through something. Their depth did not come from reading the right books or having the right teachers. It came from sitting with pain long enough to understand it, from carrying the weight in silence until it became familiar, from turning that weight over in their hands again and again until they could see every angle of it clearly. They did not choose to become deep. depth was forced upon them. And what they did with that depth, whether they drowned in it or learned to swim, that is what separates the bitter from the wise. And this is where we reach the hardest part, the part that most people resist, the part that takes the longest to arrive at and feels the most impossible when it finally does. Forgiveness. Not forgiveness in the way most people mean it, not the kind where you shake hands and pretend nothing happened. Not the kind where you say the words, "I forgive you," because someone told you it would set you free. That kind of forgiveness is performance. It is a mask you wear to make other people comfortable. Real forgiveness is quieter than that. It is a private act that takes place entirely inside your own mind. It is the moment when you stop carrying the weight of what someone did to you, not because they deserve to be released from it, but because you are tired, because the weight is slowing you down, because you realize one day that you have been spending more energy on a memory than on your actual life. And that realization, as simple as it sounds, is one of the most difficult things a human being can arrive at, because letting go feels like losing. It feels like the person who hurt you is getting away with something. It feels like if you stop being angry, then what they did does not matter anymore. Because you look at the person you have become, with all your scars and all your strength, and you realize that you would not trade this version of yourself for the innocent version you lost. Not because the pain was worth it, but because this version of you is real. This version has been tested. This version knows things that the old version could never have understood. Forgiveness, in this sense, is not about the other person at all. It is about sovereignty. It is about reclaiming the territory of your own mind. It is about looking at the wound and saying, "You changed me. You broke something I cannot get back, but you do not own me. You do not get to live inside my mind rent-free for the rest of my life. I am taking that space back, and I am filling it with something that serves me instead of something that haunts me." And when that happens, when you truly reclaim that internal space, something remarkable follows. The walls you built do not disappear, but they develop doors. The cynicism does not vanish, but it softens into discernment. The hyper-awareness does not shut off, but it stops being driven by fear and starts being driven by wisdom. You do not become the person you were before the pain. You cannot. That person is gone, but you become someone deeper, someone more complete, someone who has earned their peace through the hardest possible curriculum. The people who hurt you the most did not do you a favor. Let us be very clear about that. They did not break you for your own good. They broke you because they were careless or cruel or broken themselves. And you owe them nothing. Not gratitude, not understanding, not a second chance. But what you owe yourself is the recognition that you did something extraordinary with what they left behind. You took the rubble of a shattered trust and you built something from it, a sharper mind, a more honest heart, a set of boundaries that protect you without imprisoning you, a depth of feeling that most people will never know because they have never been forced to dig that deep. You are not damaged goods. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not defined by the worst things someone did to you. You are defined by what you did next, by the slow, painful, courageous work of putting yourself back together in a shape that is stronger than the original. And that is the quiet truth that lives at the center of all of this. The people who hurt you the most did change you the most. But the direction of that change, whether it becomes bitterness or wisdom, whether it becomes a prison or a compass, that was never in their hands. That was always in yours. Oh, so if you are carrying a wound right now, if there is someone's voice still echoing in the back of your mind, if there is a betrayal that still stings when you are alone and the house is quiet, know this: the pain is real, the loss is real, but so is the strength you are building right now, in this very moment, simply by continuing to stand, simply by continuing to think, simply by refusing to let someone else's worst moment become the final word of your story. You are deeper than you were before. You are wiser. You are more careful with your heart. And that is not a flaw. That is not baggage. That is the earned intelligence of someone who has walked through fire and chose not to stay there. The scars you carry are not marks of failure. They are a map that shows you exactly where you have been, exactly what you survived, and exactly where you will never allow yourself to be taken again. And in the end, that is the most powerful thing a person can possess. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of meaning within it. Not a life without scars, but a life where every scar tells a story of survival. The knowledge that you were broken and you healed, that you were lost and you found your way back, that the people who hurt you the most gave you, without ever intending to, the raw materials for the deepest version of yourself. Carry that with you, not as a burden, but as proof of what you are capable of becoming.